what we were a part of until after it was gone. And we spent a lifetime with a legend from the time we were kids until we're grown men, and it was a hell of an experience.
Red West is dying, and at 81, he's finally ready to destroy everything you think you know about Elvis Presley. This isn't some nostalgic trip down memory lane. This is a confession that will shatter the myth of the king forever. Because Red West didn't just work for Elvis. He didn't just protect Elvis. He was Elvis's closest friend, his most trusted confidant, and the only man who dared to tell him the truth, when everyone else was feeding him lies. And now, with nothing left to lose, Red is about to reveal the one secret that could have saved Elvis's life. The secret that's been eating him alive for over 40 years. You want to know what really killed Elvis Presley? It wasn't drugs. It wasn't fame. It wasn't the pressure of being a superstar. It was the people who claimed to love him most. The people who were supposed to protect him, but instead became his destroyers. And Red West? He was the only one who tried to stop it. But here's the shocking truth nobody wants to admit. When Red finally spoke out, when he finally told the world what was really happening behind the gates of Graceland, the world turned on him so viciously that he became the most hated man in America overnight. They called him a traitor, a sellout, a bitter ex-friend trying to cash in on Elvis's pain. But what they didn't know was that Red West had just done something no one else had the guts to do. He chose Elvis's life over Elvis's image, and it destroyed him. This man sitting in front of us isn't just any former bodyguard. This is the guy who stood up to bullies for Elvis when they were just kids in Memphis. This is the man who took bullets meant for the king. This is the friend who watched Elvis transform from a shy, polite teenager into the most famous person on the planet, and then watched him slowly die in front of his eyes. Red's voice cracks when he tells you about that day in 1954 at Humes High School. Not because he's getting sentimental, but because he knows that's the day everything started. That's the day he made a promise to protect Elvis Presley that would eventually tear both their lives apart. Picture this: Red West, built like a tank, the kind of kid who could end your high school career with one punch. And there's Elvis, skinny, different, wearing clothes that made him a target for every bully in Memphis. When those older boys cornered Elvis by the lockers, ready to beat him down for being different, Red didn't hesitate. He stepped in, not because he was looking for a fight, but because something inside him couldn't stand watching someone get destroyed for refusing to be like everyone else. That single moment of protection created a bond that would last over 20 years. But it also created a responsibility that Red could never escape. From that day forward, Red West became Elvis Presley's shield against the world. What Red couldn't have known was that 20 years later, he'd have to make the most impossible choice of his life. Save Elvis from himself, or watch him die slowly while the world cheered. And when Red finally made that choice, when he finally broke his silence and told the world what was really happening to Elvis, the timing was so catastrophic that it made him look like the man who killed the king. But here's what Red wants you to understand. He didn't betray Elvis Presley. He tried to save him. And the fact that he failed, the fact that Elvis died just 2 weeks after Red's tell-all book hit the shelves, has been destroying Red West from the inside out for over 40 years. You think you know this story? You think you know what happened between Elvis and his bodyguards? You have no idea. Because Red West isn't just telling you about Elvis's downfall, he's confessing to his own role in it. He's admitting to the moments when he stayed silent, when he should have spoken up. He's revealing the times when loyalty became complicity, when love became enablement, when protection became prison. And most shocking of all, he's about to tell you exactly what he saw happening to Elvis that made him risk everything to try to save him. But first, you need to understand how deep their bond really went. You want to know what it was really like inside Elvis's inner circle? Forget everything you've seen in the movies. Forget the glamorous stories about jets and Cadillacs and wild parties. Red West is about to tell you what really happened behind those gates at Graceland. And it's going to make you sick. The Memphis Mafia wasn't just Elvis's entourage. It was a machine designed to keep Elvis happy, comfortable, and completely cut off from reality. And Red West wasn't just muscle. He was Elvis's conscience. The only man brave enough to look the king in the eye and tell him he was destroying himself. But here's what nobody understands. Red didn't have a job. He had a prison sentence. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, Red's entire existence revolved around Elvis's moods, Elvis's needs, and Elvis's increasingly dangerous whims. When Elvis wanted to ride motorcycles through the desert at 3 in the morning, Red was there. When Elvis decided to fly to Denver at midnight for a peanut butter sandwich, Red was on that plane. When Elvis wanted to have karate fights in the backyard or gospel sing-alongs until dawn, Red was right there beside him. There was no schedule. There was no time off. There was only Elvis time. And Elvis time was slowly killing everyone around him. But Red's position was different from everyone else's. While the other guys were happy to be yes men, Red was the one Elvis trusted to tell him the truth. And that trust was about to become the most dangerous thing in Red's life. Because by the early 1970s, Red was watching Elvis transform into someone he didn't recognize. The shy, polite kid from Memphis was gone. In his place was a man who was suspicious of everyone, paranoid about everything, and completely dependent on a cocktail of pills that would have killed a horse. Red watched Elvis nod off mid-conversation. He watched him slur his words during performances. He watched him explode in rage over nothing, then apologize with tears in his eyes 20 minutes later. The man who once lit up every room he entered was now carrying a darkness so heavy it was suffocating everyone around him. And here's the part that still haunts Red. Everyone else just pretended it wasn't happening. The other guys in the Memphis Mafia had figured out the unspoken rule. Don't challenge Elvis. Don't question Elvis. Don't upset Elvis. Just smile, nod, and collect your paycheck. Because Elvis was kind-hearted but sensitive, generous but proud, and if you crossed him at the wrong moment, you were done. So when Elvis started taking pills to sleep, pills to wake up, pills to perform, and pills to forget, nobody said a word. When he started gaining weight and losing his grip on reality, everyone just looked the other way. When he started locking himself in his room for days at a time, only emerging when he felt safe enough to face the world again, they all just waited patiently outside his door. But Red couldn't do it. He couldn't watch his friend slowly kill himself while everyone around him enabled it. Red started speaking up, first gently, then more forcefully. He'd pull Elvis aside and try to talk to him about the pills, about his health, about the dangerous path he was on. But Elvis didn't want to hear it. He was surrounded by people telling him he was fine, he was perfect, he was invincible. Why would he listen to the one guy telling him he was in trouble? The paranoia got worse. Elvis started accusing people of stealing from him, spying on him, plotting against him. He'd obsessively check locks, demand sudden security sweeps, and turn on his own staff without warning. Red watched his friend become convinced that everyone was out to get him, when the truth was that everyone was just trying to keep him happy long enough to get paid. And then there were the nights when Red would stand outside Elvis's door, listening to the silence, wondering if his friend was still breathing. Some nights he'd hear Elvis calling out. Other nights, nothing. But Red always stayed close, knowing that despite everything, Elvis didn't really want to be alone. Red could see what nobody else would admit. Elvis wasn't just sick. He was terrified. Terrified of dying. Terrified of losing everything. But most of all, terrified of being forgotten. And that fear was driving him to take bigger risks, make more desperate choices, and push away the people who actually cared about him. The writing was on the wall. Elvis was going to die if something didn't change. And Red West was the only one who seemed to understand that. That's when Red made the decision that would destroy everything. July 1976. After 22 years of loyalty, 22 years of putting his life on the line for Elvis Presley, Red West gets a phone call that destroys everything he believed about friendship, loyalty, and love. But it's not Elvis on the other end of the line. It's Vernon Presley, Elvis's father, delivering a message that cuts deeper than any knife. Your services are no longer needed. That's it. No explanation, no goodbye, no thank you for the 2 decades of devotion. Just a cold corporate dismissal that treats Red West like he's some random employee, instead of the man who once stood between Elvis and death itself. Red doesn't even get to hear it from Elvis, the man he considered his brother, the man he protected with his life, the man he loved like family. Couldn't even pick up the phone to fire him personally. But here's what makes this betrayal even more devastating. Red knows exactly why he's being fired. It's not about money. It's not about downsizing. It's about the truth. Because Red West had become the one thing Elvis couldn't tolerate anymore, a mirror that showed him what he'd become. Red had pushed too hard. He'd questioned the pills too often. He'd challenged Elvis's dangerous choices too many times. And in Elvis's paranoid, drug-addled mind, that made Red the enemy. Along with Red, his cousin Sonny West and bodyguard Dave Hebler get the same brutal treatment. 3 men who had given their lives to Elvis, thrown away like yesterday's garbage. And for what? For caring too much. For refusing to watch their friend kill himself, slowly, while everyone else cheered. The pain is unbearable. But what comes next is something nobody could have predicted. Red West is about to make the most controversial decision of his life. He's going to write a book. Not just any book. A tell-all that will expose everything he witnessed behind the closed doors of Graceland. Every pill, every breakdown, every moment of paranoia and rage that the world never saw. The book will be called Elvis, What Happened? And it's going to detonate like a nuclear bomb in the heart of Elvis's empire. Red tells himself he's not doing it for revenge. He's not doing it for money. He's doing it because he believes that if the truth comes out, if the world sees what's really happening to Elvis, maybe someone will finally intervene. Maybe someone will finally save him. But deep down, Red knows there's something else driving him. Hurt, betrayal, the raw, agonizing pain of being thrown away by the person he loved most in the world. Red, Sonny, and Dave work with writer Steve Dunleavy to craft their story. And it's brutal. They detail Elvis's drug use, his violent outbursts, his paranoia, his complete disconnection from reality. They paint a picture of a man who's been destroyed by fame, enabled by sycophants, and abandoned by the very people who should have saved him. But they also show Elvis's kindness, his generosity, his deep spiritual searching. They don't want to destroy Elvis. They want to save him. They want the world to see that the king is dying and nobody's doing anything about it. The book is scheduled for release in August 1977. Red believes that once it hits the shelves, once the world sees what's really happening, Elvis will be forced to get help. The people around him will be forced to stop enabling him. Something will finally change. But fate has other plans. On August 16, 1977, just 2 weeks after Elvis, What Happened, hits bookstores, Elvis Presley is found dead in his bathroom at Graceland. The cause of death: cardiac arrest brought on by a drug overdose. The timing is catastrophic. Suddenly, Red West isn't the man who tried to save Elvis. He's the man who killed him. He's the traitor who destroyed the king's reputation right before the king died. The headlines are vicious. Elvis betrayed by his own bodyguards. Tell-all book destroys Elvis days before his death. Red West, the man who murdered the king. The hate mail pours in. Death threats, accusations. The entire world turns on Red West with a fury that nearly destroys him. But Red knows something the world doesn't understand. He knows that Elvis dying 2 weeks after the book's release wasn't coincidence. It was confirmation. Confirmation that everything in that book was true. Confirmation that Elvis was exactly as sick as Red had said he was. The book wasn't Elvis's death sentence. It was his final warning. A warning that came too late to save him. At 81 years old, Red West sits in his chair. And for the first time in over 40 years, he's ready to tell you the one truth that will change everything you think you know about Elvis Presley's death. You want to know if Red West regrets writing that book? You want to know if he feels guilty about exposing Elvis's secrets to the world? You want to know if he blames himself for what happened on August 16, 1977? Here's Red's answer. I regret that I didn't write it sooner. You heard that right. Red West doesn't regret telling the truth about Elvis. He regrets waiting so long to tell it. Because maybe, just maybe, if he'd spoken up years earlier, Elvis would still be alive today. But here's the confession that's been eating Red alive for decades. The book wasn't really about saving Elvis. Not entirely. Red knew by 1977 that Elvis was already too far gone to save. The pills had taken over. The paranoia had consumed him. The people around him had made it impossible for anyone to reach him. So why did Red really write that book? Why did he risk everything to tell the world what was happening behind the gates of Graceland? Because Red West couldn't stand the thought of Elvis being remembered as a joke. He couldn't stand the idea that history would remember the king as some bloated, drug-addled caricature who died on a bathroom floor. He couldn't let the world forget that Elvis Presley was a human being who suffered, who struggled, who was destroyed by the very fame that made him immortal. Red's voice breaks when he tells you this. I didn't write that book to hurt Elvis. I wrote it to save his humanity. Because the people around him, they were turning him into a myth, a god, something that wasn't real. And I knew that if we didn't tell the truth, if we didn't show the world that Elvis was human, that he was in pain, that he needed help, then his death would be meaningless. Red knew something that nobody else understood. Elvis wasn't just dying from drugs. He was dying from isolation. He was dying from being worshipped instead of loved. He was dying from being treated like a god instead of a man who desperately needed help. And the saddest part? Red believes that deep down, Elvis wanted someone to tell the truth. He wanted someone to break through the wall of yes-men and enablers and say, this man is dying, and we need to help him. But by the time Red found the courage to speak up, it was too late. Here's what Red wants every Elvis fan to understand. Elvis Presley didn't die because 3 bodyguards betrayed him. Elvis Presley died because dozens of people who claimed to love him chose to stay silent while he slowly destroyed himself. Red West was the only one who refused to stay silent, and for that, he became the most hated man in America. But Red doesn't care about the hate anymore. He doesn't care about the death threats or the accusations or the 40 years of being called a traitor, because he knows something the world is finally starting to understand. He was right. Every word in that book was true. Every revelation about Elvis's drug use, his paranoia, his isolation, his desperation was absolutely accurate. And if people had listened, if they had taken those warnings seriously, instead of attacking the messenger, maybe Elvis could have gotten the help he needed. Red's final message to the world is this. I loved Elvis Presley like a brother. I protected him. I served him. I would have died for him. But when it mattered most, when his life was on the line, I was the only one who chose to tell the truth instead of protecting his image. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Red West isn't asking for forgiveness. He's not asking for understanding. He's not asking for anything except this. Remember Elvis Presley as a human being who deserved better than the people who surrounded him. And remember that sometimes the greatest act of love is telling the truth, even when it destroys you. That's Red West's final confession. At 81 years old, he's finally told you everything. And now, the weight of those secrets can finally be lifted from his shoulders. The truth, as painful as it is, has finally set him free. Red West's shocking confession changes everything we thought we knew about Elvis's final years. If this revelation stunned you, smash that like button and subscribe for more explosive celebrity secrets that have been buried for decades. What other dark truths are famous bodyguards hiding? Find out next.